Hey everybody, in this video I'm going to be summarizing the top 10 lessons I learned from Tom Brady's TB12 method book. And this is a book that I think is definitely very fascinating and interesting because first off, this guy is incredible. I mean, Tom Brady. I'll be honest, like I was never a big American football fan. You know, if I would watch a game every year, it would just be the Super Bowl. But I do know that a lot of my American friends, acquaintances, they love football. So essentially, what that means is, yeah, it's important to really dig into this because Tom Brady is a beast. I mean, he has not only done well in the Patriots, but even though he's moved around, he's gotten much older, he's still crushing it, still winning Super Bowls. And so when I saw that, I was like, this guy really has something going for him. I got to figure out his secrets to success. And so, I mean, if you know who Tom Brady is, you know how incredible of a player he is to have lasted so long and still performed at the top. I mean, as I'm recording this, last year he's on a different team and he won the Super Bowl again. And so this guy has such longevity, and I wanted to read this book. I think it's the only book he's written. Um, and yes, it does mention some of his secrets to success. So that's just another thing I recommend before I get into it. Almost any successful person out there, just Google, see if they've written a book. They usually have. So I will touch on stuff that I didn't like about the book later, but here are the things that I really did like. So number one, um, he believes that pliability is the missing leg of performance training. It's the most underutilized and least understood. What this basically is, and he really beats this down to a pulp in the book. That's one of the things. The book's very repetitive in some senses, but pliability essentially is a lengthening and softening of muscles using that you would use for daily activity. And there's a specific process that he kind of goes through for doing that with a TB12 certified physician. Now, I will touch on one of those things that I didn't like, which is that he really pushes this idea that you have to go to a TB12 center to get this pliability training. That being said, he also mentions some self therapy ways which aren't as effective. So there's that, and he really emphasizes why pliability is maybe what's really preventing him from getting any major injuries for so long and excelled his game and success. The core concept I want to mention here is that essentially we are naturally pliable when we're young, but as we get older and older, we need more and more pliability because we get more stiff and so forth. And yet, what we do is a lot of strength training, which just makes us more tense and stiff, which causes a higher injury rate. So of course, when we're younger, we can get away with less pliability training, and which is why a lot of young athletes do so well. But as we get older, no one does pliability except for Tom Brady, and that's what really changed his life. And this is a guy who really, at one point, he had critical tendonitis, elbow tendonitis, and all sorts of issues, and he tried everything under the sun, Western medicine, Eastern medicine, and the one thing that finally worked was this fusion of Eastern and Western, which was pliability. He tried cold therapy, hot therapy, all sorts of things, massage, chiropractic care, and it was pliability that changed his life. So keep that in mind. Second thing, this is just a cool fact that I found very helpful. He drinks half his body weight in water every day, and he recommends everyone do the same. He says most people are dehydrated and they're not performing at their peak because they're not drinking enough water. Now, for me, I definitely knew about the power of water before Tom, and I did some Googling to find out like how much water I needed. But what Google told me was much less than half your body weight in terms of ounces per day in water, which is like he basically drinks. He said he drinks like 10 bottles a day, and that's just insane. You know, I have tried doing that even before I read this book, but I can't get through more than like 3 or 4 of these, 4 max a day. Like, it's just something in like my stomach. It just filled. I just can't drink anymore. So I don't know how he does it. I don't know if that's a smart piece of advice because maybe there is a limit. Maybe everyone's different, but I think the bigger point is that everyone should drink more water because they're probably not drinking even close to enough. And he thinks, that's a huge part of performance issues. Okay, number 3, brain exercises. This is really cool. Here's the thing. A lot of people neglect one or the other, physical activity or brain activity. And Tom Brady, at the peak of his level, he does a lot of both. So he actually has this, he recommended this app called Brain HQ. And of course, he has some type of kickback plan with them, because the whole landing page that you land on, that he takes you to, obviously, there's some type of partnership with TB12. So he probably gets some commission off of that. Um, and nonetheless, what I did was I just went to Brain HQ on Apple, and rather than going through Tom Brady's like link, which you have to pay for, the app has a free version which gives you one free brain exercise a day. So I've been doing that free exercise a day, and maybe if the need ever presents itself, I might pay for it. But the free one really does wonders, and there's a tons of exercises there in terms of memory cognition, visual and auditory, and mathematical. And there's so many exercises. I don't think I've done the same exercise twice yet, and I've been doing it for like a month already. There's all sorts of really cool ones. There's even directional ones, like you're on the subway and then you move in certain directions and you have to figure out where you are, north, south, east, or west. There's even like puzzles, and it's really, really good. Like it can really train your pattern recognition, your trends, your cognitive memory. And suffice to say, sometimes I score really badly, but sometimes it tells me I'm at the top 25%. So I'm pretty happy about that. I think the highest I've scored is top 5% on one of the exercises, but I still have a lot of improvement there. So he does these exercises apparently all the time, and that's another part of his like TB12 method. You have to train your mind as well. So that was number 3. Number 4 is rest and recovery. Now, obviously, this is something that's pretty darn important for everyone, and maybe seemingly obvious, but how much do you actually do it? Now, of course, Tom being Tom Brady and this guy who goes through really rigorous training every day, he has this thing where he recommends that everyone buy this certain type of clothing, and of course, it's on his TB12 store, but you could buy it elsewhere too. But it's some type of like reflective negative energy or ion energy clothing. And he says he saw a noticeable difference, but basically you can buy pajama versions, and he wears them to sleep every night. And something about the ions or whatnot kind of rejuvenates his body, and he can feel a noticeable difference every morning. Now, for you and me, you probably won't need that intensity unless you're like an athlete who really needs to recover fast every single day. But could be some benefit there. I do a lot of CrossFit training, and that is very intense. I mean, you're gasping for breath after it. You're putting in excessive amounts of strength workload. I do a lot of squats, deadlifts, cleans, jerks, snatches. Well, not so much snatches, but all the rest I do a lot of. And so you may need to recover. For me, I've always had a naturally fast recovery thing, but it's something to keep in mind. He also mentioned meditation and other forms of activity. He says that his wife does meditation. He's tried it. He doesn't like meditation. So he does other stuff to meditate, and he finds his own form of meditation and other activities. But, you got to find your own level of rest and recovery. Crucial, maybe common sense, but maybe not so much for some people. Number 5, promote oxygen-rich blood flow. The more you can foster oxygen-rich blood flow in every part of you, the more it rejuvenates and recovers. Now, this doesn't mean movement. It also kind of goes back to his whole pliability thing. There's a certain way of massaging your muscles with pliability that it makes it different from stretching or yoga for flexibility. Because while yoga or flexibility training may lengthen your muscles, it does not soften them. So essentially, what pliability is, it's a softer term for what he calls kind of positive traumatic activity. And what all that means is that the pliability massage therapist, the TB12 therapist, if you ever go to one of their centers, they do this thing where in terms of, like, let's say you have elbow tendonitis, this is the area of pain. They will massage the muscles front and behind it in a certain way to really rejuvenate and create, not only lengthen and soften that muscle, but promote active blood flow. You have to kind of push it towards your heart. And I think the key difference that he keeps mentioning is that you're doing this massage not just while your muscles are relaxed, but also while they're rhythmically contracting and kind of uh, like tense. And so that's the biggest difference I've seen. Because like most of the time when you hear about like any type of massage work, it's usually when they're relaxed. But the thing is, when they're tense, that's really where the issues lie. And so you have to. I think the big thing he repeated like 15 times in the book is that like when they're tense, they aren't trained to be soft. And so by like training them to still remain soft while you're like rhythmically like contracting and then relaxing it and then rhythmically contracting and relaxing it. Of course, I'm not a TB12 professional, so I'm not probably not doing it perfectly. But the ebook version or the physical book version has pictures which will help you. And essentially, by teaching your muscles to be soft and long while you're still tensing them up, that is really what Tom Brady has done, which has allowed him to avoid any major injuries for such a long time. Essentially, since they're so soft and long, when he gets hit by someone who weighs 300 pounds who tries to tackle him, his muscles are very prepped for that, and they're very soft and they do not get hurt. Okay, that was number 4, I believe. Number 5 is well, was that number 5? Okay, that was number 5. So number 6 is resistance bands training over weight training. This is a very interesting one. So number 6, Tom himself, he recommends using resistance bands over any weight training. In fact, for him, from what I can tell, he uses all or almost all resistance bands. He doesn't use weights. He doesn't use barbells. He doesn't use dumbbells. Now, why is that the case? Well, there's a lot of reasons. One is functional. You get a more fluid range of movement with resistance bands. And with weights, there's less information exchange. And he thinks in terms of traditional strength and aerobic training that's focused on maximal performance, weights, resistance bands kind of just give you that more athletic kind of resistance that's more indicative of real life. So there's a lot to this. He defines the difference between maximal performance versus optimal performance. And usually, he has a respectful but somewhat negative perspective on weight training because it's more so, well, it's not weight training specifically, but it's the concept of maximal performance. And one of the things he brings up is like, at what point in real life do you have to do a 1 rep max of 400 pounds or 3 rep max of 300 pounds? And so his gripe with that is that you have to train like you are in real life. So even as a football player, American football player, there's very little moments in actual football where you have to squat 400 pounds one time. And so why does he always see all his teammates going to the gym and doing this stuff when that's not indicative of real life? So a lot of his training is very much more focused on kind of the work and stuff that he does in his daily life, and he recommends you do that for your daily life. And for him, his daily life involves football. So it's a different kind of idea. Like, what's your goal here? Just straight up maximum performance of doing more weight with more reps, or optimal performance, doing the activities you need in your career and life. So that was number 6. Number 7, technique first. If your form or technique breaks down in your 4th rep and you start to doing things with your muscles you don't, then it's not even worth it. Your goal should be kind of focusing on optimal functional movements. This is probably a simple thing, maybe obvious to some who do bodybuilding, but still very important and very crucial. Another thing is let's talk more about like kind of success mindsets. Now, the one area of the book where he does talk about this is his kind of can-do positive mindset. Now, this guy is clearly very, very positive. You can tell it bleeds through the book, and you can tell he has such a good, kind, happy, positive mindset. And so what he says is having a positive mindset is one of the best things you can do, more so than meditation. It's something that you can train. And he goes back to a couple stories when he was getting coached and he was really starting out in the game. This was a time when he really just started at the NFL, and he wasn't really he didn't see himself as really a top candidate yet. He saw himself like kind of in the middle of the pack at best. And during that time, he had a few coaches, kind of, I guess you would call them like psychological coaches or like all sorts of stuff to kind of help him along. And he had this point where like he wasn't really getting much opportunity during practice or in the games. And one of his coaches really helped him kind of completely change his mindset. So instead of being like, oh my goodness, like I only got one shot today to prove myself, and that guy got like six chances today, and it's just not fair, and I'll never like make it up in this career. He got his mindset changed completely by this coach, who told him like, rather than I only get, it's I get this opportunity to prove myself. And through that change, he started to maximize the chances he did get, which allowed others to notice when he did perform, which gave him a couple more chances. And now, over time, through those more chances, he got even more chances. And then, long story short, all of a sudden, after a long period and gradual increases, he was the guy who had most of the opportunity in the field during games and in practice. So that's really how he did it. And it's really cool. Tom argues that most athletes are taking the wrong approach of just listening to what their coaches tell them to do and striving to do the most or longest workouts. So this is number 8, and this is about thinking beyond the traditional strength and training model. His whole point is that the aerobic and strength model that most people follow is a bit broken, and he notes that most athletes are focused on just making the team rather than having sustained peak performance for as long as possible in the sport. If they get injured, they blame the sport, not the exercise process. However, Tom argues that you should train for the sport or lifestyle that you're after. In football, it doesn't really help you to be able to bench 300 pounds or run a marathon. So athletes need to stop training like that and running these marathons during practice or squatting, so much weight, because when do you ever have to do it outside of the gym? He often sees athletes tear a muscle when squatting or benching, and they usually blame not stretching enough before. But 9 times out of 10, it's because of the lack of pliability. When the muscle is pliable enough, it's able to disperse that weight evenly. And that's a big point that he keeps mentioning throughout the book. Even disbursement of muscles due to strength, soft, long, non-tense muscles. Incredible thing. Lot can be said there. Okay, number 9. And I apologize if the numbers have gotten all screwy. There might be a chance that I added 2 extra tips by accident, which would bring us to 12, which, I don't see a problem with. It's the TB12 method. There's 12 tips here. Okay, so number 9, you can achieve an increased but limited level of pliability on your own with equipment. But the optimal way is to train with professionals. Or if you can't use professionals, use a vibrating foam roller or vibrating spear, if not both. Now this is very interesting. I've heard of regular foam rollers, I've heard of lacrosse balls, but this is the first time I've ever heard of pliability and vibrating foam rollers and vibrating spears. I think he's onto something here. Of course, one of the gripes is that he does kind of really try and monetize his entire book and push that a little too hard. But I think despite that, there's really still some gold here. And it really got me tempted to buy a vibrating foam roller and sphere. Now, I'm not going to buy from TB12 method because really, like, I could find one of equal quality on Amazon for $40. And no disrespect to Tom, but like when you're charging $200 or $150 for that thing and I'm on a budget, like, I don't know if that's worth it to me. So nonetheless, he says that's one of the best ways to really get into those muscles and really lengthen and soften them if you do not have that, professional TB12 professional there. If you ever get the book, which you might even be able to find at your library, he lists a bunch of photos which you can use yourself to potentially try and kind of improve this. Another important part, and I really love the whole idea that like he does make a few small nods to Eastern medicine and Eastern practices. He talks about Tai Chi and resistance bands. He says there's a reason why old people use resistance bands in Tai Chi. They've caught on to something that the rest of us haven't, and that's important. Like I'm Chinese by ancestry, born in America, but when I go to China or when I go to a yoga center in the States, there is a lot of older people doing Tai Chi. A lot of younger people are just like whatever, but a lot of older people do this. Now, what have they caught on to? And that is that excessive weights is overly taxing on the body. He equates the difference between using weights and resistance bands to a truck holding 1,000 pounds in bricks that has to drive around versus towing that truck that has 1,000 pounds behind it. So the former has the weight taxing the structure itself, while the latter does not. So it really gets you thinking, like, what else is out there? I talked to one of my CrossFit coaches about this, and he's like, most people focus too much on the yin but not the yang. And what he means is like the strength training but not the yoga. And so usually you need both to really succeed. So that really gets me thinking about a lot of those things. By the way, the high-tech clothing I talked about in the recovery section is called bioceramics. So check that out if you're interested. Okay, so the 10th tip is not so much a small tip, but just his actual TB12 principles, the 12 principles that he kind of lives by. I've already mentioned a few of them, but I think my last tip will just be to summarize all of them. So number 1 was the one I already mentioned, pliability is a missing leg of performance training. 2, holistic and integrative training is best. Nothing works in isolation. We've already kind of mentioned that. 3, balance and moderation in all things. Too much of a good thing isn't a good thing. Too much of a bad thing is bad as well. And here he's really more so talking about nutrition. He talks about what he has, like he has a more kind of Mediterranean diet, fish, lots of greens. You can eat meat, just not too much, and you can eat a donut, just not 10 donuts. It's not going to kill you. Number 4, conditioning for endurance and vitality. It's all about the energy, endurance, and vitality to perform the things that you love without any pain. It's about feeling well. Number 5, no load strength training. Muscles aren't for strength or show. Their function is to support your bone structure and your daily activities. Load your muscles appropriately for what you're asking in your daily life. Now, some bodybuilders might have a gripe with that. But in general, he's really focusing on this kind of functional philosophy here. Definitely iconoclastic thing. Who really only focuses on resistance bands? Number 6, promote anti-inflammatory responses in your body. Hydration and nutrition maximizes pliability. As I mentioned, that's important. 7, promote oxygen-rich blood flow. Number 8, proper hydration. Number 9, healthy nutrition. No training method is complete without the right nutrients. Number 10, supplementation. The right vitamins and minerals amplify the effects of good nutrition. Now, this is one that's definitely more controversial, but I think the main principles he does mention do coincide with a lot what most other fitness influencers say, which is that, first, it's to supplement. By definition, it's something to supplement your main core functions of nutrition. So you can't rely on supplementation. It's something to support your main nutrition. That being said, I think the one big difference is that Tom takes all these supplements, like almost everything under the sun. We're talking like all the vitamins, vitamin A, B, C, D, omega fish oils, everything else. And so he does that because he believes that there's something that you're likely going to miss in the typical diet. All the micronutrients usually aren't there. So he uses it almost as an insurance to make sure that nothing gets missed, which is very vital given how he's at this high-performing, high-paid job, and he needs to make sure everything's perfect. Now, that being said, there's definitely some controversy and other people with differing opinions on that. And not everyone wants to have a line of bottles of supplements out the door or on their table. Now, for me personally, I have maybe one or two major ones. One's a multivitamin gummy. I prefer gummies to like those pills. And then the second is a omega-3 fish oil gummy as well, which kind of tastes kind of awful. So I don't eat that one much. And I do those two also as a form of insurance and supplementation because I might miss some micronutrients. That being said, though, there have been influencers, big ones like Dr. Mike, who have clearly come out in YouTube videos to say that he doesn't believe in any supplementation. Um, and his main point is that, you should be able to get all the nutrients you need from food fairly easily. So it's more of a marketing gimmick. It's more of something that you don't need, and it's unnecessary. And he explains it in much more charisma and detail and scientific accuracy through his videos. But after reading Tom Brady's opinion and respectfully considering his opinion, my opinion has oscillated. There was a period I saw Dr. Mike's video. I was like, okay, I'm not taking any more supplements. Then I has Tom Brady's. So for me, I don't put too much weight into it. So what that means is if I do not take supplements for a few months, I'm not going to gripe about that. If I do, okay, good. Two more tips and then we're going to end this video. 11, brain exercises. Neuroplasticity is all about generating and regenerating neural connections, which means training your brain like you train your muscles. For me personally, the brain is my favorite muscle, the most amazing, incredible muscle, and I think responsible for most people's successes. And then the final 12th principle in the TB12 method is rest and recovery, as I've mentioned before in detail. You have to have the right technology, and he stresses technology a lot because he's rich and he can afford that, and he's playing on a high level. Do you need the bioceramic pajamas? Maybe not if you're just a senior citizen and you do light exercise and you have a desk job or you're retired. Probably don't need that level of recovery because you're not exercising that much. So take his advice to your own specific situation. Overall, I think I would give the book a solid 4 out of 5. Why a 4 instead of a 5? I think after I talked to my CrossFit coach friend about the book, like he was very skeptical about the whole monetization thing. He's like, is this, is he trying to sell stuff? And, I was trying to defend Tom at first, and I was like, well, no, he has a lot of good advice here too. But as I kept reading the book and I finished it, he really kind of lays home his TB12 method. Almost like 90% of the stuff he recommends, except for like drinking water, like he is monetizing heavily on the TB12 website. Now, is that a bad thing? It's probably a good business move, but when you overstress it, which he definitely does in the book, and he repeats himself numerous times, it can be a little too much, and you start to kind of be doubtful about like how much of this is legit advice and how much is him just trying to make money. And for me personally, regardless of what my coach says, I think at its core, he genuinely wants to help people, and a lot of this advice is revolutionary and beneficial. He may have just accidentally overstressed the monetization part. I wish there was more stuff in there that would really focus on helping you do it without spending a lot of money, because a lot of us are on a budget. And yes, he does give us some self-therapy exercises, but I think he overstressed the whole thing that you need a TB12 coach, massage therapist to really do a good job. And maybe that is true, but it is a little bit disappointing. That being said, I found certain ways. I got the Brain HQ app, and I'm doing the free exercises, and I'm trying to figure out my own. So thanks for watching. Like, subscribe. I would love to talk and meet Tom one day and shake his hand. He really seems like at the top of his level, not just physically, not just mentally, spiritually, maybe even, I don't know. It seems like a really cool guy. Thanks for watching.